All right, it looks like we are live. Thank you for being here. Have had some internet issues this afternoon. We had the power go out today, so it's been a little weird. It's been a little strange with the internet thing, so running a little bit behind. Thanks for being here. It's another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. I'm Robert Phoenix, and welcome to the show. Yes, I am here now. Yes, I'm here. My peeps are asking. Peeps, I'm peeping back. We're live. We're live. We're doing it. We're making it happen. So let me put a link up on Twitter. Let some Twitter people know what's going on here. To know that we have a show. We have a show. We are live. Live from the Hill Country. I've been on Twitter all day today. Contrary to popular opinion or belief, I do not have a Twitter addiction. I have a communication addiction. Let's see. Okay, here. Let's do this. I don't think I have a. I'm just gonna do a tweet. There it is. Yeah, I got a picture of me. How about that? All right, let me check in with yous. Let me check in with yous. What's happening? Let's see, who do we have here? We have starting at the top. From the very top, it is Miss Nikki. Twilight Babe 123. There she is. Joni S. JJ Rande Blanc. What's going on, JJ? WC Ray. Carrie Prasad. Thank you all for your patience tonight. Ian Barber. Hello, Ian. Good to see you. Zero Hedge in the house. There's Sony Lewis. The Cribbies are here. Astro in the house. We got Sandpoint, Idaho checking in. Frank Bry. I hope Mama Bry is doing more than all right. Shirley Losciavo, she's here. Marianne Smith. Hi, Marianne. Good to see you. Twitter is melting down. Holy shit. There's Michelle Taylor. Misty Miner. What's going on, Misty Miner? Nancy Harding. April Himmel. Who else do we have here? Robert Scanlon. Hey, Robert. Good to see you. Yes, I'm wearing my wise guy shirt. I'm watching a lot of gangsters on DJ Vlad. Very entertaining. Hey, it's Jill Wong. Hi, Jill. Jill Wong in the house. Hope you're doing well. Let's see. We've got 40 people watching now. All right. Well, we got a lot of stuff to cover. A lot of stuff to cover. We got GSS. Greg from Delaware. What's going on, Greg? Delaware County. Not Delaware. There's my man, Steve, Thor by the door. And one of my favorite pagan goddesses, Mojo Mama. What's going on, Joe? The unflappable CC Jones. Hope you're doing well. I know you got some intensity going on in your life. Let's see who else do we have here. God, this whole carjack thing has really been a freaking car wreck. Total car wreck. Car wreck in the lives of many. All right, what do I have here? Okay, I got to shut Twitter down. Taliban fighters enter presidential palace in Kabul. What a waste. Absolute waste. You know, I'm not one of these people who is looking at, you know, okay, here, let me rephrase this. They used 9/11 as a pretext to get into Afghanistan. I mean, we know that. Anybody with half a fucking brain knows that 9/11 was used as a pretext to invade Afghanistan. There was nobody associated with any of those planes that were from Afghanistan. They were not masterminding. They were not masterminding this event in a cave from Afghanistan, where the guy that was masterminding it was masterminding from a cave on a kidney dialysis machine. It was just not happening. Subsequently, they did pick people up and they took them to Guantanamo. We know that. What they did to them in Guantanamo and what they did to them after Guantanamo, because I guarantee you some of those guys were released and they weren't the same people afterwards. That happened, but they used that event to get us into Afghanistan, where they say that the West have the watches, but we have the time. That's their motto in Afghanistan. The West have the watches, but we have the time. Well, that country has now gone back over to the Taliban, which was probably the plan that was going to happen. They were going to do that. And you'll have China likely go in. I know this is not really astrological. I could probably break it down to something astrological, but China will go in, and China will help sort things out, because that's what China does. They are into nation building, and they're into the Belt and Road Initiative, whereas we have been involved in regime change. And you don't change regimes in Afghanistan. You know, and I've seen some pictures. You know, I've heard these, like, just random chatter on the internet. I should probably talk about this on tomorrow's show. I was going to get this out of the way. I've heard this random chatter on the internet. Oh, well, they're so backwards there. They're such a backwards people. And they've been backwards for such a long period of time, and blah, blah, blah. I've seen pictures of people from Kabul in the 1970s. Let me tell you, they're pretty westernized. Pretty westernized. And that's a theme for a lot of these countries that were, you know, around during the 1970s. You look at photos from Iran in the 1970s. The women are westernized. Look at photos from Baghdad in the 1970s. The women, and I say women specifically because we're talking about Muslim countries. Right? They're wearing dresses. They're going to school. They were not a backwards or extremist theocracy. It was not happening. Like, a lot of the extremist theocracies have moved in after these periods where these regime changes have occurred. So, yeah, China's going to come in now and probably, you know, do what they do, which is nation build. That's what China does. It's not what this country has been doing. We don't nation build. We unbuild nations. That's what we do. We unbuild. And now our nation is going through the unbuilding or the deconstruction process. All right, that's all I have to say about that. I'll talk more about that tomorrow on the other show, on the other channel. If you're here for the first time, welcome to Sunday Night Astro Live. This is where we talk about astrology and try to make heads and tails of the physical universe we're living in by talking about astrological themes, using mundane astrology to get a handle on sort of our place in the multiverse as it is. So tonight we're gonna do what we always do. We're gonna look at the chart of the moment. We're gonna get into that, and I'm gonna try to break down how to get through the times we're in, sign by sign. Okay, I'm giving this a little bit of thought, and every sign has something it's really good at. Right? I mean, there are highs and lows. A little bit of mid-range to each sign, but there are highs and lows with each sign. So we're just going to look at sun sign. I'm going to go through every single sign in the Zodiac. And if you are interested in navigating through these times, I'm going to try to break down what your best attribute, skill, and what I would call thrival technique, meaning that you're going to survive and you're going to thrive. Your best thrival technique to get through these times can be. I'll also talk maybe a little bit about your Achilles heel. Okay, so we're gonna do all 12 signs tonight. We're also gonna look at, and I stumbled upon this last week. I actually had seen it before. And I thought, well, there's something interesting here. Because I had seen about 4 or 5 young women in the sign of Sagittarius who would qualify for what we'd call like a MK Ultra beta kitten, or just an MK Ultra. And then I went through this list again, and I found more and more and more. And it's not just women either. There's some men on this list too that kind of fall into that territory, but it's really the women. And I'm talking about Sagittarian women. So I'm going to try to go through and show some of these women and let me see if I can, why I think Sagittarius is a sign that is chock full of MK Ultra beta kittens. Okay. And some men too, but mostly women. So we're going to look at that. And there was an absolutely stunning performance at the 2020 Olympics, which I did not watch live. I went in and looked at some other stuff. And the event that I'm talking, there are a couple of really interesting events at the Olympics on the track and field side. I love track and field, and the reason I love track and field is because I was always slow. I mean, I wasn't like turtle slow, but I wasn't really fast either. So I was really into these people that could run incredibly fast. So I used to watch a lot of track and field meets, the Wanamaker games, the Maccabee games, all that shit back in the 1970s. I'd watch TV. I'd watch these people do their stuff, and I loved the track and field at the Olympics. And sometimes, because I grew up in San Jose, California, and there were a lot of really tremendous track and field athletes that came out of that area. When I was growing up, there was this guy named Andre Phillips. And Andre Phillips went to high school in the same school district that I went to high school. And he was an Olympic hurdler. There's another guy by the name of Millard Hampton who had connections with that area. So, you know, there was also the kind of the local flavor. I talked about this before. Bruce Jenner worked out at the YMCA that I worked out as a teenager in his preparation for the Olympics in Montreal, where he won his gold medal. So that area has produced a lot of really great track and field athletes. But there was one event. This was a pretty good Olympics for if you're into track and field. It was a pretty good Olympics for that, even though I didn't watch any of it in real time because I don't have real time TV. That's number one. But the event that I'm going to look at in one particular person is Karsten Warholm. And this guy smashed the 400-meter hurdles in what could arguably be called one of the greatest races in Olympic history, maybe track and field history, because of the number of records, either personal bests, national bests. Not only did Karsten Warholm break the Olympic and world record, so did the runner-up Rai Benjamin. So they both broke the world record, which had been around since what? I think was it the Sydney Games? It might have been the Sydney Games, I think, where the 400 meters. Kevin Young was the guy that held the record. So I wanted to look at, because Karsten does not fit like this profile. I'm sorry, Karsten Warholm. He does not fit this profile of your not average. He doesn't fit your profile of this like superior track athlete. Okay, he comes from Holland, right? Sweden. He comes from Sweden. Which doesn't really produce a lot of great 400-meter hurdlers, okay? That's number one. Number two, when you look at a lot of these hurdlers, they tend to be kind of lithe and lean. And I mean, just the physiognomy of the hurdlers in that race, very different than Karsten Warholm. He's a little bit shorter. His legs aren't as long as some of the other hurdlers, but he was insanely faster. So he doesn't really fit a profile just in terms of like an athlete in that, number one, in that event. That's just number one, in that event, period. And number two, the type of athlete that usually excels in that event. Just think of Edwin Moses. Okay, that's your guy right there. So I decided to look at his chart, and like, what? Well, is there something astrological to this guy's chart that makes him an exceptional runner? And I think there is. But there was also something happening that night in Tokyo when he smashed the world record that I think we could look at and try to maybe make some correlations between what was happening astrologically and what was happening in his own chart. We're going to try to piece that together and see if we can make a connection there. He's definitely got an interesting chart, and we're going to talk about the one aspect in his chart that I think makes him really a tremendous runner, more than any other. So look, his habits, right? His training, all those things. Like, you can't just have a great chart and expect to win the Olympics. There's a lot more that goes into it. And the chart actually would play a role in something like that as well. And apparently this guy is just an insane trainer. He is driven to excel, right? And in some ways you've got to do that. And that's what's interesting about that consciousness, to be driven to excel, is that that's a consciousness that is not really rewarded in a lot of ways now, right? What's rewarded now is, hey, come on, that's a little too intense, man. You're going to watch out for your mental health. You better watch out for your mental health. You're a little too driven there. You're a little too obsessed. You're a little too focused. Take a day off. It's all good. Doesn't matter if you win. It's okay. You'll get some high fives, and if you take a mental health day, your community will reward you. We don't really. I mean, we used to really reward people that made incredible sacrifices and were able to do things that other people weren't able to do based upon the time and the effort and the sacrifice that they put in. That was closer to a meritocracy. That was closer to this world that we're exiting now. And I'm not saying that you still can't do it, but if we're going to break this down into astrological terms, it's sort of like a type of Aquarian model where everybody is going to excel, but you're going to excel because you want to, right? You want to. And you want to excel because you want to get good at something, or you, in your mind, think you want to conquer something or master something. Maybe somewhere back there you want to be the best, right? Maybe that's in there. But in a true Aquarian world, everybody's got that. Everybody has that. Everybody has this drive to push beyond limits and to be able to express themselves in a way that is going to be unique. And they're like, I would never be Carson Warholm, but Carson Warholm probably wouldn't be an astrologer either. And I'm not saying, this is curing cancer. Well, that's a whole nother story. But this is really what, in my estimation, what the true Aquarian age is about. And that's when people can excel, and then they can cheer other people on through their pursuit of excellence, right? And it doesn't. There's no diminution of one person's desire to get really, really good at something, and another person's desire to get really, really good at something. And yeah, there's a little bit of competition involved, but that's kind of life, right? You go out in the natural world. There's competition in the natural world all the time. It's not something that is indistinct from who we are. There's competition for food, for mating, for the best hunting grounds, the best nesting spots. It happens all the time in the natural world. So, and we're part of the natural world. We can't disassociate ourselves from nature, but we also have a higher nature as well. And hopefully, when we blend these two together, we can take the best of the natural world and the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, in the elemental kingdom, and then we bring the best of our own evolution to that. And that's where it gets really, really interesting. So unfortunately, what we're getting now is this other version, this tepid version of the Aquarian age, where it's okay to tap out and you're good, it's all good. You're going to be able to take a mental health day, and yeah, your mental health is really, really important, and yeah, that's good. You know, cheers, right? Good on you, as they would say in other parts of the world. And that's what's being rewarded. It's not about, hey, look, I'm really going to push the envelope or try and get better or excel, and this other person is trying to do the same thing, and we're in a healthy competition, and we're going to bring things out. Like, Ray Benjamin does not break the world record unless he's chasing Carson Warholm. It doesn't happen, right? And you could tell at the end that those guys had a real appreciation for one another, real appreciation for one another. So I think this is an important thing to kind of wrap our heads around, because when we talk about the Aquarian age, we're talking about what does the Aquarian age look like? Well, we're getting clues all the time now. We're getting clues as to what it could look like, or what it might look like, if we can begin to assemble the pieces, because it's happening. It's happening all around us every single moment of every day. We're assembling into groups, or we're assembling into nodes of consciousness. And some of them are really limiting. Some of them are really limiting. And some of them are a lot less limiting. And I think you and I know what we're talking about. So I was trying to figure out if there was a sport that would kind of typify to some degree this idea of the Aquarian healthy competition, and yet being supportive of the people that you're kind of competing against. And I would see this in skateboarding. Not that I was I skateboarded in the 70s, but it wasn't like anything like it is now. I mean, nobody was really doing major tricks, at least not where I lived. Right around the same time I was skateboarding, that's when Tony Alva and those guys were starting to skateboard down in Southern California, but they were way ahead of everybody else. And like, those guys were competitive as hell. I mean, they were really competitive. But the culture that evolved out of skateboarding was pretty, for the most part, pretty positive in the sense that you'd be doing something on your own, yet you'd be doing it with other people, which is a very Aquarian kind of exercise. And you would be challenging yourself, doing tricks or whatever they were. And for the most part, I've been around skate parks, and I've been around some of those people, and for the most part, pretty encouraging and fairly positive. Like, they'll bust each other's chops every now and then, because that's what people do. But that kind of skating, that skateboard, that skate park mentality is kind of interesting as it relates to this idea of pushing yourself, getting better, being amongst other people that are doing the same thing, and not having it be cutthroat or necessarily deleterious to one's personality and self-expression. Okay, before I get going, I want to talk about, again, this is a good friend of mine, and she is a gifted jeweler, and she has created some wonderful designs that are astrologically related. Well, they're totally astrologically related. So let me just do this here. Astrologically inspired. That's what I'm looking for. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. There we go. So this is my good friend Kimberly and her husband Ibrahim, and they have this very cool company called Artemis Designs, and they've got a nice little line of get a screen share here of astrological jewelry. And she's starting to bust out some of her tarot card designs here. We've got a moon card. We've got the sun and the moon earrings, sun moon necklace. She told me that this stuff is very popular at a lot of the fairs that they set up their booths at. This new design with the tarot images. But they have pendants here, right? You see Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, all 12 signs. So you see pendants. There are necklaces with gold layering, pretty cool. Looks like they've got a bit of a sale going on too. What else? We get to load more. Okay, let's load some more. Then we have earrings. There's some gold earrings there, right there. Leo, Virgo, Libra. So there you go. If you are interested in any astrological jewelry, and you can read more about it over there at Artemis Designs, artemistx.com. They've got other things that they're also, they also make. They have some very interesting ancient coin designs. And then they also have a Renaissance collection, and they have this whole kind of exotical world, which is really cool. I've got to get myself a hat band. I need a hat band. There she is. There's Kimberly. I need a hat band for one of my hats. You got all kinds of cool stuff there. Anyway, if you're into it, go over there, artemistx.com, and I'm sure they'd appreciate your business. Okay, let's get into it. Let's do a little invocation here, and then we'll get into the chart of the moment. Then we're going to look at how you and your sign can navigate through the times that we're in. What are your strengths? What can you bring to the table? How do you manage the intensity, the pressure, the stress, the division? And what's your Achilles heel? What's your weakness? Right. So that'll be the first part of the show. Then we'll jump off into the crazy MK Ultra, Sag, Beta Kitten discussion, and then we'll look at Carson Warholm's chart and to see if we can find out if there is a cosmic connection between his chart and his excellence in the world record-setting performance, absolutely shattering the previous world record. All right, let's get into it. Let's wrap our heads and hearts around this idea that we are all one thought in the mind of God. We're all one thought in the mind of God. We are all one beam of light in the mind of God. If we can start from this place, we'll be able to elevate our perspective. We'll be able to elevate our interactions with one another. So let's start there. We are all one thought in the mind of God. That said, dear blessed and holy Mother, Father God of the great central sun, within the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest and best information, wisdom, and truth come through us during these times. And in so doing, we affirm and decree the qualities of clarity, commitment, comprehension, courage, community, compassion, creativity, strength, flexibility, humor, higher mind, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed from the stream at this time. Okay, let's get going. We have a lot of show to cover. And once again, thank you for being here. This is Sunday Night Astro Live. I am your navigator, Robert Phoenix. And let's see where we are, astrological. Let's jump into the chart of the moment. I love this. This is my new favorite drink. This is HEB sparkling water, but it has caffeine in it. And it has a very crisp and refreshing ginger lime flavor. No sugar. It's good stuff. Okay, here we go. I probably won't be able to sleep tonight, but who cares? All right. I got to do something different here. By the way, they're making everybody at HEB wear masks again. Oh, those poor people. They're like, fuck. We just got rid of this mask bullshit. And now they've got to wear them again. You can just tell they're just so over it. I don't blame them. Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's do this. Chart of the moment. Look at that, Ann Ortley writing for Astro.com. People palmistry thing over there. Is that it? I think it is. Here we go. Let's look at the chart of the moment. We got a little Pisces on the ascension there. Just going to blend into everything. It's going to dissolve into the landscape, which is what Pisces on the ascendant loves to do. Okay. Anybody feel that Scorpio moon intensity this weekend? Anybody feel that? I did. I did personally and, well, interpersonally. Let's just say I had a ringside seat with a Pluto and Scorpio dynamic. Very intense stuff. Very, very, very intense stuff. And we're just about through it. So we're going to be moving into Sagittarius. We get the moon at 29 Anoretic. So tomorrow when you go to work, or if you're at home and you work remotely, you'll be tapping into the Sagittarius moon. And we're coming into the first quarter moon, right? Because we just came through the new moon when it was in Leo. So we got this quarter moon in Sagittarius. That means the moon is gaining momentum, theoretically, in terms of its synodic cycle here, going from new to full and then back again. So it's gaining some momentum. And the quarter moon is an interesting moon, right? It's got a little bit of air beneath its wings. Let's put it that way. It's not just fresh, baked right out of the oven like the new moon. It doesn't have that kind of quasi magical kind of state with that Shiva moon where there's this awareness that's kicking in, right? There's this kind of conscious awareness that's kicking in. But with the quarter moon, this is where the energy can become super adaptive, right? It's super adaptive, and it's heading towards its fulfillment here in the new phase. Sorry, I said the full phase. So what I mean by super adaptive is that it's a moon where you're able to kind of piece things together, and you're able to, especially when it's in Sagittarius, you're able to make changes. You're able to edit, you're able to be mutable, usually with the end goal in mind, which would be the fulfillment of that full moon, right? So how does it look in Sagittarius? Well, when we talk about Sagittarius, we talk about consciousness, we talk about expansion, we talk about higher mind. Usually the Sagittarian moon is a pretty expansive moon. There's a sense of adventure that goes along with the Sagittarian moon, and restlessness as well. I could see that there would be, over the course of the next couple of days, as the moon begins to move into square with Neptune, the potential for people like kind of being over restless, right? Because the Sagittarius moon wants to expand. We're in this quarter moon phase. It's like, okay, we want to build to this crescendo. Usually that's what happens with the full moon. There's this crescendo moment. So what do we want to build on? What are we building on? Where are we headed? Which is a really big existential question for us anyway. But with the Sagittarian moon, there's this sense here that summer is drawing to a close, and we want to experience something. We want to experience either part of summer vacation, or maybe the last thing. Schools are all start at different times. So maybe you're going to try and squeeze in another adventure with your kids before the week is out, right? The Sagittarian moon might bring some of that up. So, hey, look, what do we plan something for this weekend? Right? There could be part of that. But I think there's a bigger story here. And because where we are right now, everything seems to be accumulative, right? So when we have a certain aspect that's going on astrologically, it's not just that aspect, but it's an accumulation of where we've been and what we've been going through. And, we've been in this state of what I would call pulsing inertia. The inertia means that we've been in one kind of stasis, which has the same kinds of touch points, right? The same kind of touch points that were part of our experience starting last March. Right? We're still part of that continuum. And there have been new pieces added to that continuum, but we're still part of that continuum. So in that sense, we've been in this kind of loop of inertia where we have not been able to either break out or break through. Well, there are breakthroughs, but they're not the kind of breakthroughs that we would typically associate with the word breakthrough, if you know what I'm saying. So when we have certain transits that we're either going through in our lives with our chart, or we're going through in the mundane cycle, that the cumulative effect of not being able to release energy, or to be in what I would call, for all intents and purposes, a more organic time, right? A more organic time. It can be very frustrating, very, very frustrating. So a lot of times these aspects will have sometimes a very powerful effect, depending on what they are. And even like a minor aspect, which usually a moon-Neptune square, I mean, it's transitory, right? It's going to be in square. The moon is going to be in square with Neptune for what? Maybe solidly for about, 18 hours, right? With the approach of the moon, and then moving away from the moon, right? About 18 hours. And you would think, well, 18 hours is not a big deal. But again, when you're in a cycle like the one that we're in, which I think, again, is pulsing inertia. And what I mean by pulsing inertia, it really fits where the nodes are too, because Gemini and Sagittarius have been pulsing on and off. And Gemini to me is a sign. There are two signs to me that are very pulse related. One is Cancer and the other is Gemini. And the reason I think Gemini is pulse related is because you're dealing with, these two factors, right? The masculine and the feminine. You're dealing with on, off. You're dealing with positive and negative. All the things that you would think about when you talk about this idea of Gemini. So Gemini is a sign that can pulse between these two, like these two switches inside the sign. These two tiny poles inside. To me, Cancer is another sign that pulses, and it pulses in like waves, right? It waves. Because when we think of Cancer, I think of Cancer as I think of all the water signs as being very wave-like. To me, Cancer is very, very wave-like. The tide is in, the tide is out. The tide is in, the tide is out. The tide is in, which is very Cancerian. And if you're a Cancer, you know what I'm talking about. If you're on, you know that you're on. You feel really good. You feel emotionally secure, stable, and you're confident, and you can just be in the world and know exactly who you are. If the tide is out, forget about it. You feel off, you feel tired, you feel grouchy. So to me, Cancer is a sign that pulses in terms of its wave-like action. Gemini pulses and flickers like light, right? On, off, on, off. So the pulsing part of kind of where we are is, or the pulsing inertia, is that there are times where, hey, guess what? We found this breakthrough vaccine, and all these people are getting this vaccine, so it's mask off, and let's go to the water park, and let's go to the ball game. And then it pulses off again. So now we're in the off mode. We're in the on mode, we're in the off mode. But we're still kind of in the same place. You understand what I'm saying? So being that we're in this pulsing inertia, and we have this accumulation of any number of things. It can be accumulation of frustration, accumulation of alienation, accumulation of distortion, emotional distortion, accumulation with disconnection. All these things, these are things that people are experiencing in pretty significant ways. That when we go through even a minor aspect like a moon Neptune square, because everything has become cumulative, that aspect can, especially when we get into the moon in Sagittarius and Neptune in Pisces, that aspect can be very significant. Well, why? Well, because the moon is again beginning to approach. It's at this quarter phase. It's beginning to approach its culmination in its fullness. So in Sagittarius, it's like, okay, we really want to put some energy into this, right? We really want to put some energy into where we started off with the new moon and Leo, whatever is going on with you with the new moon and Leo. It was Sagittarius. It's about expansion. It's about expansion and emotional authenticity, emotional truth. Yeah. And then we have this moon Neptune square coming in, and we got Neptune in Pisces. And what happens? That's messy, right? This is people who are maybe trying to get, sort of the last sort of squeeze out of their emotional experience before all the doors slam shut. It's sort of like that party scene in On the Beach, that movie about the end of the world, where everybody's kind of drunk and trying to like get in one last really, really good, drunk on before the world ends. I mean, I'm not saying this is where it's going, but it kind of feels that way, right? Because summer's starting to come to a close. And people are really wrapping their heads around the fact that their kids are going to be going back to school. And that's a very complicated issue for a lot of people. A very complicated issue for a lot of people. And this is a YouTube channel, so I'm not going to go into the exact reasons why, but if you watch this channel and you watch my other shows, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So when we look at the moon as well, we talk about mothers, we talk about this maternal energy. And we talk about, now we're talking about mama bears because they're coming out at these school board meetings. Guess what? School's approaching. They're coming right up on us pretty quickly. So I would say that over the next 48 hours, keep your eye on mothers, keep your eye on school board meetings, keep your eye on people that have decided that they've had enough, When we get into the moon Neptune square, it's not pretty. It's messy, right? People are trying to emote authentically in that Neptune square to the moon. And look, to me, Neptune in Pisces has everything to do with injectables, right? We think of Pisces, we think of things that are liquid. We think of the pharmaceutical industry. It's a very Piscean kind of industry, whether you're popping pills or whether you're taking shots or whatever. It's all very Piscean because we're dealing with drugs, right? Pisces is a sign that's related to drugs, and drugs that are liquid-based or aqueous, viscous. And we all know how that's manifesting in the world as I speak. So we get this new Neptune square. You're going to have people that are saying, hey, we're not down with that. But I think that the realm of politeness has that bus has left the station, right? That train has left the station. I think you're going to see people that are going to be short-tempered, less than polite, and you're probably going to see the next 48 hours. Now, one of the things that I do like about this Sagittarian moon is that it will be in trine with the sun. So we still have the sun in Leo. It's at 23 degrees. So on Tuesday, we have the sun, moon, sun trine, moon, Neptune square. That's going to be Tuesday's going to be an interesting day because there's going to be a lot of power around emoting. When you hook the sun and the moon up together and the courage of one's convictions in fire signs, look out. Look out. We're talking like laser beams here, okay? Laser beams. So it's going to be an interesting week. It's going to be a very, very interesting week. And even when the moon gets up around 20, 22 degrees, 23 degrees, I think it'll probably be in trine with the sun at about 25 degrees. It will also be in sextile with Jupiter. So do the math on that. I mean, that's a lot of authenticity, right? That's a lot of people just saying, hey, look, we're tired. We're tired. And what Jupiter does is it will expand the potential for feeling. And again, we've got this square with Neptune. That's part of the mix. So I think this is going to be an emotional week, but it's not going to be namby-pamby emotion. Not with the moon in Sagittarius. If you've got something to get off your chest, this is going to be the week to do it. And it may be messy. It may be offensive, right? It may be offensive to some people. To some people, it may be offensive. To other people, hey, maybe not so much, right? And one of the great teachings of Jordan Peterson, and I'm not a huge Jordan Peterson fan, but one of the great teachings of Jordan Peterson is that you have to be willing to offend someone. And in our culture, that's been a trait that has been deep sixed. And what he means, it's not about being offensive, but it's about taking a risk and disagreeing with somebody. Right, disagreeing with somebody, because in our culture, and I use the word culture now loosely, that disagreeing with somebody would be offensive. You'd be offending them if you disagree with them. That's how touchy people have become. You disagree with them, and it's offensive, and then they walk away. Oh, you're hateful. You're hateful. Well, get ready. Get ready for a spoonful of hate this week. I'm telling you. When the moon moves into Sagittarius, trine that Leo sun, sextile Jupiter, it's going to get some courage too along the way, right? It's going to have to it doesn't have to. It will sextile Saturn. And that's when people will start to feel very strongly about things and like they have a basis and foundation for their feelings. And then it moves, it kicks into that trine with Jupiter, and it's look out. Look out. A lot of people are going to be very authentic. And probably pretty messy. So you have this, again, this accumulation of energy, right? This accumulation of energy, which is going to be connected to this idea that we're not in the same linear time space. Like the continuum has been broken. The continuum has been broken. We've been living in, again, this idea of a pulsed inertia reality where people can't seem to get out of the Groundhog Day of the terms and conditions that always seem to change but remain the same. And then you have these aspects that come in, and boom, right? Boom, they're ready to really explode. We also have a really nice Mercury-Mars conjunction coming up. Oh yeah, that's gonna factor into the mix. Yeah, and the moon, let's see, by tomorrow night and early Tuesday morning, that moon is going to be in square with Mercury and Mars. Oh, that's going to be interesting too. I mean, talk about short temper. Short temper is like no patience. This is going to be a very interesting week because I do think that there's some potential for some emotional release. And for some people who have not been, how shall we say, I don't want to use the word political because that's too loaded, but people that have been on the sidelines, I'm just living my life, I'm just trying to get through. There's going to be a wave of people that are coming off the sidelines. You can just feel it. And this is a week, I think, that it happens, especially with some of this school board stuff. And going back, so keep your eyes on that. Mercury's going to start to move closer into conjunction with Mars. Man, That is going to be super, super intense. And it's got that in conjunct with Saturn. Look at that. Look at that. And you know, we've seen Saturn in Aquarius essentially be the Yahweh of science here, right? Saturn in Aquarius has become the Yahweh of science, but not the positive Yahweh. We're talking like the vengeful desert god Yahweh version of science, and it's retrograde. And I think a lot of the people. It's really interesting. Like I was reading this Forbes magazine that basically said you shouldn't research things for yourself. Are you fucking kidding me? You shouldn't research things for yourself. What universe are we living in? What universe are we living in? Are we living in this learned helplessness? I mean, it's just bizarre. You shouldn't research things for yourself. Oh, okay. Right. We've come a long way from my body, my choice to you shouldn't research things for yourself. Because if it is your body, your choice, would you want to research what goes on with your body, right? Well, I've researched this, and you know, that little thing growing inside of me, that's really not a big deal. I'm just going to go ahead and clip that. I've done all the research. I'm good, right? I'm good. Oh well, okay, but you can research that. You're okay with that. They promoted people to look into things, especially things that they being the high priest of science, that they are down with. Oh yeah, okay, good, yeah. Oh, you saw the commercial on TV. Oh yeah, that's a very interesting new drug, and they've had some very good results with it. So you've looked into it a little bit. Oh, look at you. You're really on top of it. What else did you find? I could probably answer a few questions about that for you if you like. Oh, you research that stuff. You get on. Oh, good job. Yeah, I'll send you home with a 6-pack. But it's bizarre. It's just totally bizarre. Forbes magazine. Don't research things. Don't do it. Leave it up to the experts. Yeah, that's your Saturn. That's your Saturn in Aquarius, and it's retrograding. So people are starting to, I'd like to think, people are starting to kind of look at this stuff and go, what's going on here? What is going on here with these people who are telling us that this is in our best interest and we should be following their guidelines? And yet they're acting like not petty tyrants, like kind of like third world banana republic dictators. Because if you question, you know what they're like? They're like mob bosses. Again, I've been watching these videos of like these guys have been in gangs and these crime guys, these wise guys, and this one video, this guy was saying, "Hey, look, if you're in one of the Latino gangs and they tell you to do something, you fucking do it. There's no negotiation. You do it or else it gets done to you, right? You just do it." Some of the quote unquote black gangs, they've got a little bit more negotiation involved. Apparently, this is, again, I know nothing about it, but this is what I've come across. Like, yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. It's not as straightforward. But when we now hear what Forbes has to say, when St. Fauci comes in and says you're going to have to give up your personal liberties and freedoms, for the greater good, what is that starting to sound like? That's starting to sound like the orders that would come down from one of these crime families or one of these gangs. It's just very, very hardcore, black and white. Don't question. Don't research. And people now are finally starting to go, what's going on here? The more that they become adamant, and this is where we get into the Saturn retrograde, the more that they become adamant, I think the more breakdowns you're going to witness in their program. It's just the way it is. there are people, believe it or not, in this world that still pick up on things like that. They still pick up on the fact that somebody is telling them what to do in ways that are beginning to become overbearing. And now we have the inconjuncts coming in, right? So the inconjuncts with Mercury, Mars is already there. Mercury is there as well. Tomorrow it'll be within another degree of getting really much tighter with that inconjunct. We've got a 150-degree angle here, 3-degree separation or less on the orb. I just get pushback. This is a big, big, big pushback energy. Of course, Virgo deals with health. We have Mars in Virgo, which is like the health warrior. We got Mercury, the messenger of the gods, coming together and trying to understand what their relationship is with this Saturn in Aquarius, which was in the mix. Saturn in Aquarius was in the mix almost from day one. Almost from day one. You know, after Saturn goes from that Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January of 2020, it's just a mere hop, skip, and a jump to Saturn 0 degrees and Saturn 1 degree in the beginning of COVID-19. So Saturn in Aquarius has been the patriarch and the lord of science from day one with this. So this is going to be an interesting week. No doubt. No doubt an interesting week. We've got Venus just getting ready. It's at 29 degrees. Virgo just getting ready to go into Libra. That should be helpful, right? I mean, Venus and Libra, trying to find a win-win for people, how to negotiate, and you get what you want, I get what I want, and everybody's happy. I think that energy is actually quite good. It can bring some balance to the week ahead. You've got the trine with Saturn coming up. You've got a big trine with Jupiter a little ways down the road here with Venus. I like it. I like Venus and Libra by and large. In general, it's in its own sign. It's in its dignity. I've got it in my chart. So, of course, I would like it. Yeah, and it's even going to be in sextile with the Sagittarian moon. Okay, so here's my prediction for the week. My prediction for the week is a turning of the tide. I feel like where we're headed with a lot of these elements is a turning of the tide. And how this thing looks, I'm not necessarily sure yet. I would say that women and strong women that have the current of truth running up their spine and into their crown chakra with a little pulse in the middle to their heart. Keep your eye out for these women. Nurses, look for nurses. Remember now, the moon and Cancer, in my estimation, rules nurses. Can't tell you how many clients I've had who have Cancer on the midheaven, and they're nurses, okay? So keep your eye out for nurses this week. Nurses, mothers, and school boards. And I'm going on the record this week, the tide begins to turn. All right. That's where we are, the chart of the moment. Okay, let's talk about the big picture. And we've been in this space, whatever this space is, really since I would say officially March 11th is, for me, 3/11 is when the NBA decided that they were not going to play any more games for a while. I'm like, okay, here we go. All right, when you have a major sports league shutting it down, and one that has fairly obvious ties to China, and the NBA is really yoked with China through Nike, through a lot of its star players. LeBron James is one of the more obvious people in the NBA, but there are other ones, and ones that are much more likable, like Klay Thompson, who I think is a really cool young guy. He's kind of like the anti-LeBron. He's got big shoe deals in China. He goes there almost every year. There's goofy videos of him dancing in China. So it's not just LeBron and these, and like Clay doesn't know, right? I don't think he knows. He just sees it as kind of a cool thing. He's an Aquarian. It's what the world does. It's a big world thing. And he's got sponsorship deals. He doesn't really know sort of the deeper political ramifications. Well, he might be waking up to them. We'll see. We'll see. But really, since 3/11, we've been in this trough. Right? We've been in this state of inertia, disconnected from a previous time, and the new time has not yet asserted itself. Part of the Janus ritual, which we've talked about and covered here. We're still on the inside of the Janus ritual. And I'm not going to get into that too much right now. But how are you going to get through where we're at and theoretically where we're going? And we, in a lot of ways, we have to prepare for things now that are that 3 or 4 years ago, you just wouldn't be having these thoughts. You wouldn't be having these thoughts. You wouldn't be thinking along these lines. But the social contract is so broken right now that the things that we've gotten used to and dependent upon may or may not be there. Not only that, but the uncertainty that is connected to and linked with those kinds of feelings is exacerbated by the shattered connections within our personal lives, with our family, our friends, and our communities, which adds into this very intense kind of vulcanization, this process of vulcanization where we're all being cooked, right? We're all being cooked by pressure. And then we have other things that are kind of, adding into this. If you are a 9-to-5 person and you're having to stare down a quote unquote mandate that your employer is putting out there, and you have to figure out whether you're going to say yes or no. If you're going to say no, what does that mean? It's a whole nother level of just intensity here that most people have never experienced before. So these are really intense times, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? These are intense times, and we're going to try to go sign by sign by sign to figure out, number one, how you and your sign can navigate through the times that we're in, and what you might be good at, and try to play your part and play your role. And the beautiful thing about astrology is that charts generally tend to be diverse. Like, you're not just one thing. So if I talk about Aries, well, you're not just an Aries. You're an amalgamation of a lot of other things. You may have planets, you may have Venus in Taurus, which is very different than your sun sign. You might have Venus in Pisces. Very different than your sun sign, right? So I'm going to talk in generalities, but there are other much more specific elements to each and every one of us. And one of the things that I also want to talk about before I go into this sign by sign kind of breakdown is that one of the things that people maybe lose touch with, and I really, really do hope that you learn about your chart. I really hope you learn about your chart, because I found astrology to be a pretty amazing tool, actually. I wouldn't do this every Sunday night if I didn't think it was. And I wouldn't work with people if I didn't think it was a pretty amazing tool. And I just keep learning from it. I just keep learning from this process. And over the weekend, and I think due to this Scorpio moon, I had to encounter a great deal of intensity in a situation. And I've got 3 planets in Libra, Moon, Venus, and Mercury. And I went into that situation, and that's what I tapped into. Right? I tapped into those 3 planets so that I could, be intuitive, communicate and articulate, connect in terms of relating, right? In a way that kind of impartial, fair, and balanced. And it was pretty intense, I have to say. It was a pretty intense exercise. And what was interesting is I knew as this was happening that, okay, I'm having this experience. I'm really tapping into the stellium in Libra. And what was very interesting about it is that one of the people on the other end also knew that, right? He knew that that's what was going on. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because your chart has a lot of different traits and characteristics. And yes, you're an amalgamation of all the things in there, but sometimes you can just go right into a certain part of your chart. You can access that part of your chart, and you can do it consciously, right? That's the beauty of astrology and kind of quote unquote knowing thyself. You can access that stuff consciously and go, okay, this is where I'm going now. This is what I'm tapping into now. I know that I can kind of count on this as this part of my chart. And this is how I'm going to come at this situation. But you may not come at another situation. Like with all that stuff in Libra, I may integrate it, but I might come at another situation very, very differently. It depends on what it is, right? So I'd just like to put that out there. So when you work with your chart and look at your chart, that you understand that there are aspects of your chart that you can tap into in a way that are conscious and aware. And you go, okay, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing now. And this is how I'm exercising these elements that are part of who I am. Okay, so let's get back to this. You are many things. Like everything that we're looking at, theoretically, you're part of it too, and it's part of you as well. So I don't want to just make this really shrunken and small and say, well, this is Aries, and this is Taurus. We're talking about big cosmic energies, right? That getting back to the start of the show, that you were thought in the mind of God. But we're gonna condense it here, and we're gonna take the best parts out of that so that you can get through our time here. All right, let's start with Aries. What do we know about Aries? Aries is a pioneer. Aries is generally a risk taker, but they don't know they're a risk taker. That's the beautiful thing about Aries. Aries just pushes ahead. Aries to me is always kind of out there on the edge. They are trailblazers. They get to things before other people do. And Aries are not afraid of conflict. Sometimes they may want to have some other kind of experience, but that's not what they're here for, right? Aries is here to navigate through conflict. So this is a very interesting time for Aries people because number one, if you're really into this idea of being a survivalist, right, and being out on the cutting edge or the blazing edge and having a pioneering spirit, well, guess what? This is your time. If you wanted to thumb your nose at society and say, fuck you, I'm out of here, Aries, get in your covered wagon and go. Because this is a time where you could do it, right? You're just going to forge ahead. You're going to get out there and you're going to be there for other people. One of the people that comes to mind for me with the sign of Aries is Ram Dass. Whatever you think of Ram Dass, some of the shit that's associated with him, he's an Aries. He's a total Aries. He was Tim Leary's buddy. Leary, of course, being a Libra, so you have the Aries-Libra thing with Ram Dass and Libra, which is kind of interesting. But so Richard Alpert is an Aries. He's out on the edge with LSD and LSD research, and he's one of the first guys to go to India. And he's the guy that brings back Neem Karoli Baba and this whole Das kind of community, Bhagwan Das, who was actually there before Ram Dass, but Ram Dass wrote the first book, right? Anyway, so Bhagwan Das, Krishna Das, Jayutal, this whole community, Baba Hari Das. And so that's a very Aries thing, right? He's an Aries. He's there early on with acid research. He's there early on in India. He comes back and he writes the book, the big book. I'm thinking of Towards the One, which is the Sufi book. You know what I'm talking about. He writes the book. It'll come to me. He's the guy that plants, in a lot of ways, like it's Ram Dass who plants transcendentalism in the Western mind. There are other gurus that come to the States way before Richard Alpert took on the name of Ram Dass, but he's the one. He's the one that is sort of that trailblazer and that pioneer. That's Aries energy. That's Aries energy. And one of the things that Aries is known for is the courage of their convictions and not being able to be afraid to offend somebody. So if you're in this milieu, if you're watching this stream and you're here for generally probably a particular reason, because there are a lot of other astrologers that you could watch and would watch who might have a very different take on kind of where we are. So if you're watching this video and you're in Aries, you know, part of what you're here to do is to basically say, hey, you know, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not going there. And I'm not going to apologize for it, because that's another thing that Aries doesn't really do. They don't really apologize. So if you're in Aries, it's kind of, the beautiful thing about Aries is that it is one of the least, in some ways, self-conscious signs, because they are so imbued with expressing will that they just do it. They do it. And sometimes they do it in a way that's kind of scary. Like this guy Duterte from the Philippines, that guy's an Aries. He's an Aries and he doesn't give a fuck. But Bolsonaro is also an Aries. He's a little bit different than Duterte. But there's that quality, right? Duterte is like, hey, man, you get a vaccine, I'm going to fucking kill you. Like, that guy is a gangster. And I'm not saying you have to take that path. I'm just giving you a distillation. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what people think. And I'm going to think Bolsonaro cares what people think. So if you're an Aries, that's something that you can cultivate, and not necessarily cultivate it in a way where you're going to do it to, you know, get in somebody's face and, you know, thumb your nose at them, right? But it's just who you are. It's who you are. And Aries is a sign that's connected to leadership. So in a way, and usually by what they do, not always by what they say, by what they do, not by what they say. And if they're really, really good at what they do, people will follow them, right? Peyton Manning was an Aries. He was an Aries, and he was really good at what he did. And a lot of people jumped on board the Peyton Manning Express, and fairly successful National Football League and otherwise. So your missionaries, your missionaries is to just be who you are. Be pioneering, be fearless. Be fearless. Show the rest of us what it's like to stand in fear, right? To stand in the face of fear, not stand in fear, but stand in the face of fear and move forward. Move forward. Go beyond where no man has gone before. I always thought that was interesting that those words were uttered by William Shatner, who happens to be an Aries. Now, the downside, the vulnerable side, of course, is always going to be connected with the opposite sign. So the opposite sign of Aries is Libra. And sometimes when Aries gets out of balance, they're not dealing with the fact that they have to deal with other people, right? But in this case, it's probably better to be just a strong, hardcore Aries and define who you are, and whoever wants to be in relationship with you at this time will figure it out. They'll figure it out. And if you're consistent and you show character and respect, you'll have whoever you need to around you. Now, we do have a little bit of a wild card with Chiron, which is at 9 degrees. So it's going to be affecting most people born roughly around 2 degrees Aries up till about, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 degrees Aries. So we're talking the 24th of March to roughly about maybe the 6th, 7th of April. It's a bit of a wild card, and Chiron theoretically would be there to help you heal and integrate and individuate your identity. And you would have to take some risks associated with that, whatever those risks are. All right, let's talk a little bit about Taurus. How do you get through this time? Well, we know that Taurus is grounded and solid. We know Uranus is in Taurus, so it's making some interesting adjustments to Taurus people, right? Interesting adjustments to Taurus people, or Taurus people are having some interesting adjustments to make. But Taurus is super grounded and patient. That's the one thing that I think during a time like this, if you're a Taurus and you can remain calm and patient and grounded, that's huge, right? Because you're the earth. Like, you are the emissaries of the earth. So if you can hold the earth within you, you're doing something pretty significant. Pretty significant. So that means that you're going to be grounded. You're gonna figure out how to grow some things. You're going to be in your body. You're going to be connected to nature and things that are the byproduct or the products of nature. And you can get into things like arts and crafts and all kinds of goodies, right? That are associated with nature, that are associated with the trades of the artisans. But just by being grounded and patient and finding your center and being peaceful, you can be a rock. You can be a rock for yourself and you can be a rock for others. You are the earth. You're the emissaries of the earth. So in a time like this, it's a really good time for you to stay rooted. Now, when I say stay rooted, it doesn't mean you have to stay in one place, but stay rooted and stay connected to the planet. And there are just simple things that you can do, like going outside and taking your shoes off and really connecting your souls. Everybody should do that, by the way. But Taurus, that's a good practice. It's a really, really good practice. Meditation can be really good for Taurus, especially when it's outdoors, especially when you put your coccyx, on the ground up against the base of a tree, really ground in, and just see your spine going right into sort of the center and the core of the earth, right? These are things you can do. This is how we demonstrate the best parts of who we are. And so think about, if you're a Taurus, think about being able to practice patience, practice peacefulness, practice a sense of being connected and really grounded with the planet, that you are the earth, and that you can be this kind of nurturing force. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It's the same. It's a little bit different I think for a female Taurus but a male Taurus can do the same thing, right? Look around you. What needs to be fixed, what needs to be built, what needs to be constructed, right? Even in your own life. So the downside or the vulnerability with Taurus is Scorpio, and this is where you can get into having to deal with some of your fears, right? Scorpio, we get into things like death and sex and other people's money. And with Taurus is a sign that's really related to material values. So when we get into that scorpionic energy, if you're not feeling grounded, if you're not feeling abundant, if you're not feeling like you are blessed, and no matter how much you have, you are blessed with plenty, that Scorpio can kick in, and it can create a lot of fear, and it can really shrink that first chakra, which I think is very Taurus-like. And then the next thing you know, you're acting out of a very different place, not a place of abundance, but a place of hoarding and acquisition, and not being like sharing and blessing and fertile, right? That's how that opposite sign of Scorpio comes in and kicks in. Okay, we don't have enough. We're limited. We're going to die. A lot of the survival fears come in, and that's where you get sort of the lesser side of Taurus. You're not going to get any of this. This is ours. So just keep an eye out for that. Go through your fear of death, Taurus. You'll be just fine. Okay, let's talk about Gemini. Gemini, we had the true node of Gemini since last year. That's the ability to be mutable, right? This is your time. If you're a Gemini, kind of your time. You can make pivots. You can wear different hats, learn a new language. So theoretically, if you're a Gemini, you've been able to kind of get through, right? And we're still not through this. When the nodes switch in January, we're going to be going from Gemini, Sag to Taurus, Scorpio. So Gemini is something we can all learn right now. It's not just you, Gemini, as a person. The true node in Gemini, we all need to be adaptable. We all need to be mutable. We all need to be able to kind of be on the move. The place that you're not living in, or the job you're not working at, isn't working out, get on your bad motor scooter and Gemini out of there, right? And we've seen so much movement, more migration in the last year than I think, I don't know, maybe since the Dust Bowl period. I've never seen anything like it before. It's all under the sign of Gemini. So the other thing that Gemini is really good at, if you're a Gemini, is learning new shit, right? This is a good time for you to learn new things. You know, what new things can you learn? And then ultimately, what can you do to demonstrate those things to other people? You know, how can you share them with your community? Because we look at Gemini, you look at the third house. It's the world around you. So how do you get through this time, Gemini? Well, it's okay to be a little skitsy, right? You have our permission, you know, but be skitsy in a way that allows you to move and to navigate. I'll give you a good example, and this might be, you don't want to do it forever, because none of us want to live in this world forever. But one of the things that this true node in Gemini, or being a Gemini, could illustrate for the rest of us is that, let's say you need a blankety blank to go somewhere, right? You need a blankety blank to go somewhere, and you don't have a blankety blank because you haven't taken a blankety blank. So what you do is you come up with your own blankety blank. That's very Gemini-like, by the way. That's a very Gemini-like kind of move. Now, I'm not endorsing that. But you know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying there. This is the true node in Gemini. And sometimes, you know what it reminds me of? Sort of. It reminds me of Roman Polanski. And I read Polanski's biography on Polanski. And when he was in Poland, he was a young man in Poland. He had to get out of Poland because of the war. And of course, Polanski is Jewish. So he had to get out. And what he did is he created a flesh-colored foreskin out of wax. And he attached it to his member. And yes, indeed, when he wanted to leave Poland, they had him pull his pants down. And it passed. It passed. And there's a term for that. It was called the Polanski prick, by the way. So there you go. There's a little Gemini, and I think, what is Polanski? I think it might be a Cancer. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. But this is what Gemini does. Gemini, you're great at navigating. You're great at getting through things. You're great at putting on any number of faces, disguises, fronts. This is kind of like who you are, right? This is how you're going to get through this time. And you're going to use your brain, and you're going to use your connections with people, your social connections, and you're basically going to outsmart the period of time that we're in. Now, you got to watch out for the South Node in Sagittarius, which is the law, right? And right now you've been on top. Gemini's been on top. But when we move into next year, that Gemini-Sagittarius relationship is going to kick back in again. So Gemini will have to answer to this kind of, larger sort of codec of the law, shall we say, right? A larger codec of the law. So that there is, well, there's less, there's more of a potential to be found out if you're being a trickster next year, right? Because these nodes they're gonna shift and move. The other thing with Sagittarius too, with Gemini, is like, because Gemini can do this, it's like, well, kind of above the law. They're kind of above, not every Gemini is like that, by the way. And I don't want to categorize Gemini so negatively, but they're trying to deal with not having to deal with all this Sagittarian bullshit at times. So you got to just watch out for that, especially not necessarily now. I think after the first of the year, when these nodes shift, and you're going to be a little bit more encumbered, let's say, a little bit more encumbered by the ramifications of movement and choice and putting on different faces, masks, disguises, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, Cancer, what are you good at? What are you good at now? Well, it's about, again, nurturing, creating home. This is a tough time for Cancers. This is what really spurred my idea about this, because Cancers are very sensitive. They're super intuitive. They feel everything. And Yeah, and I just think it'd be really hard to be a Cancer right now. Be very difficult because Cancers need consistency, they need security, they need safety, and we're living in a world where the social contract has been shattered into 1,000 pieces. Tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, there's no guarantee as to what this world is going to look like, right? And Cancer's a sign that really needs that, really, really needs that. So how do you, as a Cancer, get through a time? And again, we're coming to the end of this Pluto in Capricorn. By the end of 2023, Pluto's moving on, right? So every Cancer, pretty much, unless you're a late Cancer, has been worked on with this Pluto opposition. So, I mean, I think you could probably make a case that the universe has prepared you to be where you are now with this opposition, right? You've had to go through things. You've either had to lose people, face your own like self-annihilation, things like that. So maybe you're more prepared now than you were, say, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when Pluto went into Cancer. I think it was about 15 years ago. It was 2009. So what is that? 12 years ago, right? So a lot of Cancers have been through it. So let's hope that you've shed your skin and you're able to stay in the now during this time. But the best thing you can do is just take care of yourself, right? Take care of yourself. Make sure that you're getting enough sleep, enough food, the right water, that you're hanging out with people, that even if it's one or two people, like I know our social circles have gotten smaller, but even if it's just one or two people, make sure that you're hanging out with people that get you, that feed you in a certain way, and then you can feed them back. So Cancer, you're all about self-care and then demonstrating that self-care for the rest of us. Because that's what Cancer is here to do, is take care of yourself, take care of your body, take care of your emotions. And if you can do that, then you're showing other people how to do that. And that's a huge thing, right? That is a huge thing that you can do. It doesn't even you don't have to go out and save the world, just save yourself. Save yourself and show up and be available. And you will show people how to live accordingly. And that's a great gift, really great gift. I just talked about Pluto and Capricorn because that's the opposite sign here. And the harsh part about Cancer is having to deal with that kind of Capricornian, one size fits all, top down, kind of cold, sterile, austere, paternal kind of energy. That's a hard part, and it's really interesting because you have these two characters, Mercola, who's a Cancer, and Fauci, who's a Capricorn, and they're so different. They're so different. Mercola is nurturing. He's very feminine in a lot of ways. Like, I know the guy works out and everything, but to me, he doesn't really. Yeah, he doesn't look like a ripped workout guy. And he cares about people's health. He cares about their health, and he set up a great website with great products, great articles, and now he's a wanted fucking man, right? He's a wanted man. He's a Cancer. So what does he have to do? He's got to demonstrate how he's going to take care of himself. And who's he going up against? He's going up against Fauci, who's his opposite sign. He's a Capricorn. It's right there. And what's really interesting, and I've been thinking about Fauci and Mercola for a couple of weeks now, and they're blaming and ascribing all of these atrocities, treacherous atrocities, onto Mercola. They're like pointing everything at him. And the reason why they're doing it is they want to deflect it away from Fauci. That's exactly why they're doing it. No, not only that, but of course, he's the whale. Mercola's he's the whale. He's the Alex Jones of health, but not like Alex Jones. You know what I'm saying? He's the whale. And they want to go after the whale. They want to go after it. But really, everything that theoretically that how do I say this? The Pope of Science. Theoretically, everything that the Pope of Science has done and that he's greenlit and gaslit, that reaction and that kind of animus that has been directed towards Mercola should be going in the other direction, right? It should be going in the other direction. But they're doing this redirect, this energetic redirect. And they want to make Mercola the scapegoat here. Cancer versus Capricorn. Watch Mercola, watch how he takes care of himself. Whatever he does, right? He's a Cancer. Pay attention to him. He will get through this, I guarantee you. All right, let's talk a little bit about Leo. Leo, how are you going to get through this time? As painful as it might seem, you got to stay open with your heart. That's your yoga. You got to stay. I haven't connected with David Palmer in a while, but he's always my favorite Leo to talk about when I talk about this kind of stuff, because he's a warrior. He's a warrior of the heart. And that's what you're here to do. You're here right now. Even though it might shatter your heart into a million pieces, you've got to keep it open. Why? Because just like I said with Cancer and Taurus, all these signs and the embodiment of those signs that we have inside of ourselves, they're part of the human story. You are doing your part as being part of this collective being. So you're in charge of the heart, and you've got to stay in your heart, and you've got to have courage, and you've got to be creative. And guess what? You've got to have some fun too, right? So if you can manage to have some fun and be creative in a time like this, that's pretty fucking good, right? Get your inner Mick Jagger on. And I know all the adrenochrome shit, but Jagger's a Leo, okay? So just get your inner Mick Jagger on, and just keep your heart open, and just absolutely be there. Be there, be in the moment, let it bleed. There's another Rolling Stones kind of aphorism for you. You can do that. You'll get through this time. You'll demonstrate to people. Like I've learned so much from David, even though I haven't talked to him for a while. He's been through a lot, right? So I've learned a lot from what he's gone through and how he's been able to maintain his approach to the world. And that's the story of Leo. That is the story of Leo. And keep your sense of humor about you, and don't let him get you down. Don't let him get you down. And of course, you can learn a little bit from Cancer there, the self-care part as well. The challenge for Leo is obviously going to be Aquarius, which again is removed and cold and slightly detached. And hey, get off your throne and be with the people, the Vox Populi. And there's a greater version of that and a lesser version of that now. So you Leo's got to figure out which version of that you're going to participate with. And there's an opportunity to direct your heat and your light and your love in one version of that, and maybe not so much in the other way. Virgo. Well, guess what? You are here to figure shit out, right? You're analytical, you're a problem solver, you're into health. This is very much your time. Virgo, you were made for these times. I think Virgo as a sign is really good at crisis. Really, really good at crisis. Sometimes everyday stuff, Virgo might have too much nervous energy to deal with. But in crisis, Virgo is really, really good. It's a mutable sign. It goes from solid to liquid, maybe more so than Gemini. So you got to take care of your health. You got to take care of your body. And you've got to be nimble and analytical, just like Gemini does. But you're here to solve problems. You're here to figure things out. Right? You're here to look at the system and see this is what's wrong with the system. The system is sick. The system is diseased. Right? The system is terminal. So then what can you do? Well, you can theoretically bring cures, or you can bring new ideas, or you can assist people that are having a hard time, because Virgo is about service. And in a time where there's a lot of crazy energy, Virgos can really thrive. When things get settled down and they kind of become more, quote unquote, mundane, we would all love for things to become more mundane, but in some ways, then Virgo has a bit more of a difficult time. but this is actually an interesting time for Virgo. So, you know, for you, it's like, how do you solve shit? How do you solve shit? How do you figure it out? How can you be of service to others? And how can you respond to your life and the lives of others in a time of crisis, which again, I think Virgo is really, really good at. Take care of your body, right? That's important. The flip side, or the Achilles heel for Virgo in a time like this is to lose faith, right? Virgo is on kind of the faith automatic pilot, like it's behind them, right? Okay, I know this thing is behind me. It's behind me, and it's just there. I'm gonna recognize it, and I'm gonna keep moving forward as if it is already integrated into part of the things that I do. When that goes away, that's when Virgo becomes less successful. When they question, when they doubt, that's when it gets difficult for Virgo. The other thing with Pisces, you know, we get into things like habituation, bad food, or bad food habits, liquor, alcohol, drugs, and anathema to Virgo in that way. So just keep your space clean, keep your body clean, and just keep moving forward and look for fires to put out, look for problems to solve, look to be of service. You'll be just fine. Libra, you're here to be a mediator between people, right? You're here to mediate people, you're here to mediate events, you're the meeting point between the upper part and lower part of the chart. So theoretically, you could be somebody who could be really good at negotiating and diplomacy, you know, be able to, you know, bring one side together that may not see the same thing as the other side. I mean, that's part of your skill set, right? Also, beauty and to some degree, like leisure and kind of an artistic and cultivated lifestyle, right? Libra brings cultivation. Libra brings art. Libra brings things to our world that make it easier to live in a lot of ways, whether it's beauty, the beauty of form, or the appreciation of it, or the creation of beauty, right? Libra is really, really good at that. So, you know, it's generally considered, I think Libra sometimes can be considered kind of a lightweight sign, but remember, it's a cardinal sign, which means it's going to initiate. It's also a sign that's connected to justice and making sure that, you know, things are balanced and fair. And that's a really big part of maintaining who you are. You've got to stay in balance. It's not an easy thing to do. Libras get out of balance. They're here to figure out what balance is. So try to, you know, this is a time where you get to practice that during a very kind of, you know, stifling, inertial yet chaotic period, very strange. You get to figure out how to be like a slack rope walker, right? This is your time to do this. And also life has to be in some ways pleasant, right? That's part of being a Libra. So Libras are really good at social graces. And yes, sir, I had a funny experience today. It was one of those weird psychic moments, but I think it relates to what I'm talking about. So I was at the gas station, and I went in and I was going to pay for some gas, and some guy held the door open for me, which I've talked about. And I said, thank you. And he said, yes, sir. And I thought to myself, you know, Texas is a yes, sir, no, ma'am state. And just as soon as I said that, the woman from behind the counter asked the guy who was there, would you like anything else? I mean, right after I had this thought, he said, no, ma'am. I was like, right. It was like, there it was, right? I said, Texas is a yes, sir, no, ma'am state. And he's like, no, ma'am, there it is. That's Libra, where you're good at social graces. And during a time like this, social graces break down. You're the gatekeeper of social graces. And it's not insignificant. It is not insignificant. Don't let this world become, you know, a shithole, right? Don't let it become a shithole. You're good at social graces. You're good at mediation. You're good at the appreciation, the creation of beauty. Do that to the best of your ability. It's a great thing to do. You do that, you will get through this time in style, and make relationships and make connections with other people. Continue to network. You know, your backdoor, your vulnerable side is Aries, which is about being hurried and rushed and pushy, and
and Aries does not have a problem with confrontation. Libra does. Libra does have an issue with confrontation. So, you know, some of the things that we're going through now is, let's say you're somebody who goes into an environment where they say you've got to wear a certain thing or you've got to have a certain thing, right? And that person is setting up a confrontation. They're setting up a confrontation. Aries learns through confrontation. What do you do, Libra? How do you deal with it? What's your diplomatic skills? How are they going to kick in? How are you not going to be triggered by somebody confronting you and wanting to, you know, have a psychic full frontal assault? That's what you need to figure out and be able to deal with, so that you're not knocked off balance and that you're composed in any situation. Let's talk about Scorpio. How do you get through this time? You got to go to the end, right? Scorpio, you face the imminent collapse of everything and you get through it. Like, you have to go to the end for everybody else, right? Just go to the end and face your fear, whatever it is. Face your fear, go through the fire. That's what you do. And then you regenerate, right? You regenerate, and through that regeneration, you have the potential of regenerating others. A fantastically potent and powerful sign that can, you know, bring life to things. That which there was no life, Scorpio can reinvest life and magnetism energy into those things, whether they're people, relationships, social structures, whatever they are, inanimate objects. Scorpios are good at that. They can take something, shine it up, put it back together. Next thing you know, you've got something of value. So, but you have to go through the end. You have to go to the end. You have to face your fear. You have to go through the fire, and it's a tough assignment. It's not an easy assignment, but when you do, and you can go through the fire on a weekly basis now, it seems, but when you do, you always come out the other side. You're always stronger, and you're always more available than you were before. And your challenge there with, the other thing with Scorpio is resources and assets. It's a great sign to acquire and attract resources and assets. That's part of what you're here to do, especially during this time. You know, and if there's a time where the money thing gets weird, Scorpio, like, you better practice your manifestation skills, because that's where you'll really shine. In a time where, you know, we're attracting either people or situations or opportunities, you're the one that's going to have the tractor beam for abundance. And that's where we get into Taurus, you know, which is, again, the fear of not having physical goods, the fear of not having money, the fear of not having things that are grounded and put you on the earth, right? You have to go through that. You have to go through that and realize that there's more. There's more to life than those things that keep you here and attached to this realm. And when you do that, you're free. And guess what? You get a lot more than you thought you could have gotten initially. Sagittarius, you're here. Best thing for you right now. Tough time for Sagittarians, but stay free, right? Stay free. You're going to be off the hook here. I've had more Sagittarians come to me for readings over this period than any other time. It's usually a sign that does not have a lot of, I haven't had a lot of connection with astrologically in terms of consultations, but boy, this last year, they've just been falling out of the trees, which is great. I love working with Sagittarius people. They get big ideas, right? They understand the big idea, the big picture. You can talk to them and try to get them to understand about how it's important for them to be authentic and truthful, and they're willing to listen, right? They're willing to listen, like, give it to me. This is a great thing about Sagittarius. And I'll tell you a story here. Sagittarius that I know has been really divided, right? This is the back end. This is a perfect back end story, because the back end for Sagittarius is Gemini. So they have been divided. They've been living in California, but just found everything to be just too restrictive. We're talking like Sagittarius, Leo moon, right? Just too restrictive. So they made a choice to get out of California because they were probably going to go postal. And they came here and had a very difficult time, you know, with their partner who was in California, and trying to convince their partner, like, hey, look, this is what's happening here, and it's better here, and you could do great here because you've got a transferable skill set that you could make a ton of money here being Texas, and really going through it, right? Really going through a lot of this very intense life drama that a lot of other people are going through. And what they did is they hung in there, being torn apart, right? Husband, kids on the other side of the country. But then, because they were persistent and decided that they really wanted to make this case for being free and more expansive, they were able to essentially bring other people, like, you know, her husband, into the mix and say, okay, I'm in. And then last week, basically, you know, put an offer on a house here in the Hill Country and got it, right? So going from being extremely locked down to going to a place now where, you know, acreage in a very nice, not, you know, over the top, but nice, comfortable place that they can begin to make a transition to. That is the story of Sagittarius right now. You've got to figure out a way to stay free. You've got to figure out a way to work within the limits of your life and the system, but to continue to move forward and expand. And if you can do that, boy, you are really nailing it. Really nailing it. And again, the back door is the Gemini story. I'm feeling split, divided. And, you know, like, you know, when I think of Sagittarius too, I think of like Jonathan Swift and Gulliver. You know, I think of Gulliver as being this giant kind of Sagittarian kind of character, and the Lilliputians are being, you know, this kind of little tribe of Gemini people, right? And just tying them down and having to deal with, you know, waking up in a world where, you know, maybe it's a lot smaller than the world he had come from, right? But he persists and he winds up finding his place in that world and learns a lot at the same time. And I think that's the story of Gemini, the story of Sagittarius. Capricorn, how do you get through this time? Well, you know, if you're a Capricorn and you're in corporate, you're probably gonna get through this time just fine, let me tell you. But if you're not, then you've got to figure out, you know, where you're gonna be on the mountain, right? And Capricorn is really good at planning shit. That is the beauty of Capricorn. So you've got a plan, you've got to have a plan, you've got to be able to have a plan that's workable, even if it's one step at a time, one day at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. That is your thing, right? That is what you're here to do. So you've got to figure out where your goals are right now. And if you're, whatever that is, you've just got to be the best Capricorn you could be. Capricorn is unflappable and patient. That's the other thing. And you can demonstrate to people how to do that, right? You can demonstrate to people how to stay cool, stay focused, stay on point, and continue to build and grow. It doesn't really matter what happens to this world in a lot of ways. Capricorn, you're still tasked with the same fucking thing, right? Which is to have a goal, reach some level of achievement around that, and actualize. So you get to the top of the mountain. So the mountain might change, your goals may change, but you still have the same kind of attitude, maybe a slightly different approach. You do that, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And I think that Capricorn also has, I'll just put this out there, a little bit of responsibility to other people. A little bit of responsibility, right? Like to take it out of the, like, I'm going to achieve this or accomplish this, but how many people can I bring along with me? Because that's really evolved Capricorn. Again, we're talking Pluto and Capricorn. So just like Cancer has had to go through all these very intense changes, usually feeling like it's coming from outside of themselves, Capricorn has had to go through a lot of these changes as well. So we've seen Capricorns in our lives go through a whole lot of intensity, where people that have Capricorn ascending with Pluto going through their 12th house, huge change to these people. And I think they're probably more inclined to bring more people along prior to this Pluto transit than they were prior to the Pluto transit. So Cancer, right? Cancer is the thing that can, you know, be your Achilles heel. And for you, it can be rooted in things like the past and sentimentality and doing things because of some sort of, you know, sticky family commitment, right? You can learn from Cancer, just like we can learn from a lot of our, you know, every opposite sign has a lesson for us. Every opposite sign is a lust for us. You can learn from that. Like you can learn from how to be maybe a little more nurturing or comforting, right? But what you don't want to do is you don't want to be stuck in the mire of what's the word I'm looking for? The mire of nostalgia, right? The mire of nostalgia, or the way things used to be. That's where Cancer can get really stuck. So you have to kind of integrate those Cancerian parts, but you've got to keep moving forward. Or you have to keep moving forward. Aquarius, well, it's your time. We got Saturn here, we got Jupiter here, we got the super conjunction, which really set it off for your sign. And you've just got to continue to find a unique kind of angle for how you're going to, be in this domain now. This is your time to really, shine personally, but also build bridges with other people. Right? This next 21-year period for Aquarius is the ability to express yourself in a very unique way. Right? You're being rewarded for it by this super conjunction, but also in a way that's grounded. Because now with Saturn there, it's about, well, how do I put this into form? How do I put this into form? So cultivating your unique response to the world that we're living in now, which is creative and rebellious and looks at things from a different angle and a different perspective and has an eye towards community and groups that you can be a part of, cultivate, and find your niche. We're moving into the Aquarian age. So you get to figure out what that's like, how you become kind of an exemplar for that, and really kind of breathe into it, right? It's your time to breathe into it and explore your authenticity and raise other people up too. There's that saying, I am my brother's keeper, right? Which I think it's a very Aquarian thing. It's a very Aquarian kind of maxim. You got the back end with Leo, so the challenge for you right now with the Leo energy, I think, has a lot to do with sort of old models of authority, right? These old models of authority. And we know who some of these old models of authority are. The Pope of Science is just one of them. And when Leo gets hit with these old models of authority, sometimes they can be rebellious in a way that can be very kind of counterintuitive to who they are, where they're going. And they're reacting, right? They're reacting to a certain type of stimuli. Now's not a time to react. Now's a time to create a new path. Like, leave that stuff behind. Leave it all, just like that song by Ride, my favorite tunes from that kind of Manchester shoegazer era. Anyway, it's your time, right? Be bold and make some new friends along the way. Pisces, just go with the flow. Just go with the flow and try to find some inner peace. Right? You're here to really connect with this more eternal question, or this eternal kind of relationship with the cosmos and God. Like, this is what you're here to do. And so to be the best Pisces right now is to really build your spiritual faith and try to limit some of the day-to-day fears, which I think could come up, with your opposite sign of Virgo. And also Pisces is a really super creative sign. So creativity is really heightened. This is one of the things that unfortunately we're getting pushed down like into the first chakra with a lot of our day-to-day lives. So things like creativity and imagination, they're taking these secondary or tertiary roles in our lives, and they shouldn't. Like, we need these things on a daily basis because they inspire us and they give us a visionary kind of approach to the world that we're living in. And whatever that is, I mean, who knows? I mean, we could be staring down an extinction level event, whatever, right? But if you have some creativity and imagination and some spiritual faith, we can create a whole other kind of collective response, a whole new mythopoesis that comes out of that. So remember that. right? Even the most dire kind of prediction of the time that we're living in could actually be pretty fucking creative and imaginative. So Pisces, that's on you. Be okay with it. Learn to go with the flow, ground your faith, expand your faith, and don't forget how to be imaginative and creative. So there you go. I think that that's a pretty good roundup of all 12 signs in terms of how we can get through these times. What do you think, Jasper? What do you think? I just had a psychic moment with him. I was thinking about Jasper. He just came right on over here. Yeah, I'm talking about you. You want to come over here? All right. Let's see what time is it. It's 10:20. Okay, so I've been here for 2 hours now. Let's round this thing up. I want to go over this Sagittarian stuff. And then we're going to look at this this chart of the hurdler from Sweden, Carson Warholm. And I'm going to show you why I think he's really, really good and why I think he has been able to be one of the world's great middle distance hurdlers. Fantastic stuff. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time with this Sagittarian thing, but I think it's interesting and kind of worth checking out. Let's just go through a lot of these signs or a lot of these people. It kind of blew my mind when I had seen this before, and I'd noted it once before, but then it really grabbed me again. So let's just go through some of these people. 2 or 3 is like a coincidence. Like a dozen is a significant pattern. Okay. So let's start right there at the beginning. We got Miley Cyrus, also known as Hannah Montana. Of course, Dad Billy Ray, her handler. And he was her handler on the show, right? So she would meet him, and he was like the guy that would set her up with gigs and everything. And she was, student by day, secret little country western teeny bopper rock star at night. He was her handler on the show. He's her handler in real life. And there's no coincidence that he was involved with Lil Nas X in his first video. Think about that. There she is, Miss Sagittarius, Miss Mickey Mouse Club. Well, she's Disney. Miss Disney MK Ultra Kitten. Tyra Banks. I'd say she probably fits into that category, although not as directly as Miley Cyrus, but I've heard that she is in the MK Ultra camp. Who else do we have? Christina Applegate. I'm going to take a pass on this for now. Brad Pitt. I would say Brad Pitt's probably in the club, right? He's in the club. I think Brad Pitt's got some MK Ultra energy around him. He married a fucking MK Ultra high priestess. He's in the club. He's a Sagittarius. By the way, I think he's a great actor. Sia, who I actually met one night at a club in LA. She was very nice at the club, but she got super nutso, right? Totally nutso. And so yeah, she's very talented. I think her father was in Men at Work, but again, somebody who seems completely fractured and traumatized. Katie Holmes. Need I say more? Mary Tom Cruise. Who knows? Maybe she didn't grow up in that kind of MK Ultra environment, but man, she sure found herself connected to an organization that is darkly illuminated. Judi Dench passed. There's Jeff Bridges, Mr. Starman. I don't know who this person is, Sarah Hyland, but she sure as fuck looks like she's somebody who's been traumatized, doesn't she? I mean, I'm not going to make any many assertions here, but that is one fucking traumatized look, I gotta say. And Sagittarius. Obama looks like a fucking cartoon character there, doesn't he? I mean, look at that. He looks like he's a cartoon character. He's got a giant head. You know, Cheadle's another guy. He's a little on the dark side. No pun intended. Trust me. A little on the dark side. Like Don Cheadle's got a little bit of Illuminati connections. Put it that way. Here you go. There's the poster child for what I'm talking about, Britney Spears. So we've had Miley Cyrus, we've had Sia, we've now got Britney Spears. I don't have to say any more about that. Sarah Bareilles. Okay. Oh, who do we have here? Nicki Minaj. There's another MK Ultra kitten. Right there's Ben Stiller. Sarah Silverman. I wouldn't say she's MK Ultra or traumatized, but she certainly fits kind of a profile. She's got that Sagittarian bluntness. That's for damn sure. Janelle Monáe. First time I saw Janelle Monáe was the album cover where she was half android and half human. I'm like, this girl, they got plans for this girl. And sure enough, she fits the profile. She fits the profile. She's given us a fresh perspective on her sexuality. Jamie Foxx, another guy that fits the profile, right? In Living Color, had to wear dresses, hanging out at the Playboy Mansion. Apparently got all kinds of tape on Jamie Foxx from the Playboy Mansion. And he wound up being lovers with Katie Holmes. When's her birthday? There's Katie Holmes. December 18th, and Jamie Foxx, December 13th. Sun-Sun conjunction. They're probably into each other. Sun-Sun conjunctions are good. But I think Jamie is he's part of the club, right? He's part of the club. Taylor Swift. Do I have to say any more? Samuel Jackson. Another club. Another member of the club. Jamie Lee Curtis. Now she's some old school MK Ultra, right? Old school MK Ultra. Curtis Guest, that's Christopher Guest, that's her husband. I had one time I was in Seattle and I was doing some volunteer work for the Seattle Film Festival. And somehow they had me do something. And I went up in Christopher Guest's suite in his hotel. I don't know what I was doing there, but it was something for the festival. But he was there. And I talked to him. He seemed like a very nice guy. And he was actually on the phone talking with Jamie Lee Curtis. My only connection with Christopher Guest in a very brief one. But man, she's old school MK Ultra. Terry Hatcher, Anna Faris, I don't know much about her. The hot chick, lost in translation. The House Bunny Overboard. Julianne Moore, she's another one, old school MK Ultra'd out. She comes from that, what's that? She's part of that club. Where is it? Is it Yale? It's wherever Duchovny, the something pudding club or whatever it is. Her and Jodie Foster and David Duchovny are part of this club. It's kind of a little secret society. Their own little secrets of some other people in there, but she definitely is. I wouldn't say she's Britney Spears, MK Ultra, but there's something about Julianne Moore and programming. There we go. Speaking of programming, we got Jay-Z, Handler from Beyonce. Vanessa Hudgens. We got another Disney girl here. Alyssa Milano. Child star, totally whacked out, right? Another Sagittarius. Chrissy Teigen. You get the picture here? What is going on here with Sagittarius? I think it's the Gemini thing. I think it's the Gemini thing. I think it's the back end. I think it's Gemini. And whether or not these people who are engaged in manipulating the psyche of people understand that and seek these Geminis out, or they gravitate to these Sagittarius out, I don't know what it is. But the thing with Sagittarius is that they live with a lot of conviction. That's the other thing. They live with a lot of conviction. So if they're programmed and they have these bicameral splits, right, that when they're engaged in acting out, it is with conviction. They're all in. That's kind of an interesting piece to this as well. Zoe Kravitz, Jake Gyllenhaal, is that how you say his name? Lucy Liu, there's another one. She also has that kind of, that illuminated MK Ultra vibe. Whether she's Britney Spears level vibe or whether she's just part of the game, right? The illuminated game, right? She's in it. And Sagittarius. Amanda Seyfried, I do not know who this person is. I probably should know more about them. There's Judd Apatow, who seemed like he was doing about a movie every other month for a while. Eugene Levy, Jonah Hill, Sarah Paulson. Oh boy. Okay. American Horror Story, she played Marsha Clark. Look at that, Christina Aguilera, another Disney girl. Definitely on the MK Ultra tip. Kiefer Sutherland. What possibly? Scarlett Joe. Man, the hits just keep coming. Raven Simone. Ellen Burstyn's interesting. There's Mark Ruffalo. I used to like Mark Ruffalo. I'm not a fan anymore. Got a Hanks kid in here. Oh, Billie Eilish. How about that? Man, it's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? Like this is the MK Ultra Kitten illuminated all-star team. Right here. Like this is the dream team. This is the MK Ultra illuminated beta kitten handler dream team. Sagittarius. Not even close. No other sign is close. And by the way, you got Haley Baldwin, Bieber, isn't that Alec Baldwin's kid, who's married to Justin Bieber now? It's World Mental Health Day, and something that has affected my mental health is the state of our country, the future of our country. I have hope. We need to collectively make the change we want for our future, and that means getting out there to vote. Robot. This guy's a rapper, right? Okay. Rita Ora, I think she's another little pop singer now, right? Ed Harris, a good actor. I don't like his politics. Good actor, though. And then there's poor Brendan Fraser. And of course, there's Ozzy, one of the great Sagittarians of all time. Got to say yes to another excess. Steve Buscemi, John Stewart. Very sad. He's born on William Blake's birthday. Catherine Hagel. Oh, there's your great Sagittarian, MK Ultra fake asshole. And then, oh my God, look at that. That's just bizarre. Billie Jean King. I think Billie Jean King. I think Bobby Riggs threw that match with Billie Jean King. I'm convinced of that. Totally convinced of that. Back in the day. There you go. There's your MK Ultra illuminated beta kitten all-star team. I even left out Jane Fonda, Tina Turner, and Bette Midler, who are also Sagittarians. Pretty wild, huh? It's got to be the Gemini thing. It's got to be the Gemini thing that they can be hacked and partitioned. That's my sense. Astrological, that's my sense. Okay, let's get into this real quick. Let me just show you. I'm gonna play a little of this Karsten Warholm stuff. This guy's amazing. Right, this is the race that I was talking about in the Olympics. And I really like Ry Benjamin. He seems like a cool dude. He handled this like really, really well. I mean, he ran the race of his freaking life. And this guy just ran a better race. It's scary. Scary how good this guy was. Where do I start this thing? I don't want to start from the beginning. Let me start here. I'm about 3 minutes into this. So I want to play a little bit of narration. The channel is Total Running Productions. So copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. 1970s allowance made for fair use purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute. I'm gonna put this up there as well. So I'm claiming the same thing for this video. Thank you, Total Running Productions, for doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna play a little bit of this. I'm about 3 minutes in.
Meaning that an almost perfect race was required to hit the magical 46. Indeed, breaking 47 was already going to be a big challenge, and breaking the world record once again was going to be extremely difficult. However, this race made time and space stand still, because Karsten Warholm didn't just break his own world record, he absolutely obliterated his previous mark, hitting an almost surreal time of 45.94 seconds, a time that took down his previous record by almost an entire second. Think about just how fast this is. It took almost 30 years for anyone to improve on Kevin Young's 46.78, and by just 0.08 seconds, less than a tenth of a second, Warholm finally managed to pull out a world record. However, for this Olympic final, this margin of improvement was beyond jaw-dropping. It was genuinely unbelievable. Finishing close behind Warholm was Ry Benjamin, who also smashed the previous world record with a time of 46.17, and finishing in third was Alison dos Santos from Brazil, whose time of 46.72 also would have defeated Kevin Young's previous Olympic record, and it now makes him the third fastest athlete in the history of this event. Watching Warholm cross the finish line and seeing a 45 on the screen was genuinely shocking. This kind of time wasn't supposed to happen for the next 20 or perhaps even 30 years, but with exceptional speed, marvelous execution, and a performance on the biggest stage in athletics, Warholm outperformed any and all expectations. Now, we simply have to give Ry Benjamin a huge amount of credit here, as his 46.17 was also a historic time, and in any other race throughout the history of track and field, he would have won over the second place finisher by more than half a second. However, it just so happened that Warholm's 45.94 occurred in this exact same race. Overall, the entire field ran incredibly well in this race, and ultimately, this race resulted in a new Olympic record, 3 new continental records, also known as area records, 6 new national records, and 6 new personal bests, all in the same race. The only other Olympic final that even compares to this was the 2012 Olympic 800-meter final, when David Rudisha broke the world record with a time of 1:40.91, and behind him was also multiple national records and many new personal bests. On paper, this race is almost objectively the greatest and fastest race of the 2021 Olympic Games, at least as far as record-breaking performances go. However, if we take this performance just one step further, we can see that Karsten Warholm's time of 45.94 is actually much more historic than we realize. The only way to truly appreciate just how epic this performance was is to open up the history books of world athletics performances. For each and every performance, World Athletics gives out a score between 1 and 1,400, with 1 being the lowest score possible and 1,400 being the highest possible mark in any event. Throughout the history of all track and field performances, very few athletes will ever hit a mark of 1300. And to give you an idea at just how elite this 1300 mark is, Elaine Thompson's new Olympic record of 10.61 in the 100 meters earned a total score of 1,289. Beyond this 100-meter time, if we look at Wade van Niekerk's 400-meter world record of 43.03, he earned a total score of 1,321. These two times were certainly impressive, but they come nowhere near to Karsten Warholm, because his time of 45.94 was a mark that achieved a score of 1,341, which is one of the highest all-time scoring marks in track and field history. In fact, out of any performance in any track and field discipline, this 45.94 ranks as the 6th greatest performance ever in track and field history, only falling behind a very select few performances. Now, this scoring system is not perfect, as a mathematical projection isn't quite capable of taking every single detail into consideration. However, it is very effective in comparing world records across the history of athletics. Indeed, there were many amazing moments in this year's Olympics.
All right, I'm gonna stop it right there. So they didn't show his Olympic run because NBC has the rights to that. So what he was doing is he was interspersing some other races that Warholm and Ry Benjamin had been in, right? But he did this channel did a really good job of capturing just how magnificent that effort was. It was just completely next level stuff. So I decided to look at his chart and try to figure out, like, well, what makes this guy tick? And he was born in Norway. I thought it was Sweden, so my apologies. He was born in Norway. And when you have a chart, when you're born in one of those northern hemisphere or southern hemisphere countries, the charts get really weird, right? The houses, some houses, usually it's like Pisces is almost always enormous in terms of the sign or the house. So you get really big houses, really skinny houses. And there's different ways to work with charts like that. I mean, you could do an equal house chart, which, basically makes everything equal. In that case, I would actually probably recommend having an equal house chart because those charts are hard to read. But what I did is I relocated his chart for Japan. Now I don't have his I don't have his birth time, so I just decided to use like 12 noon. But there's some aspects to his chart that I think are really interesting, and I think I could make a case in some ways for his accomplishment. Now, one of the things that again, I'm no expert in track and field, but one of the things that he's noted for is his strength. Like, he's really strong, and his ability to power over the hurdles is pretty significant. And you could just tell that the runner-up, Dos Santos, and the second runner-up, Ry Benjamin, third and second place respectively, like, just body type, they're just different, right? They're longer, they're leaner, they're striders. Ry Benjamin was flat out amazing in the men's 4x400 relay, the only gold medal that the men's Olympic team won in Tokyo. He ran the anchor leg, and he just blew the doors off of everybody. So Ry Benjamin is really fast. He's super fast, but he does not have the same ability to get up and power over the hurdle that Karsten Warholm does. So when Warholm hits the hurdle, he's actually exploding into the hurdle. He's just not getting above it. He's exploding into it. Whereas Benjamin is probably doing his best to explode into it and get some height, but he's not getting the same kind of velocity over the hurdle that Warholm. Like, if they were going to run just a flat race, Ry Benjamin could probably beat Karsten Warholm pretty easily. I mean, not easily, but he would beat him. But it's the hurdles that Warholm really is excellent. It's where he excels. So when I looked at his chart, I was trying to find something that would give us a sense as to like, well, where could that take place? So he's got a Sun-Mars conjunction in Pisces. Sun-Mars conjunctions are powerful. They're powerful, and they're fairly rare in charts. I have done a lot of charts. I've done thousands of charts. I haven't come across a lot of Sun-Mars conjunctions. Not that close. Certainly they're there. I've had them, but not that close. And Mars is out in front of the sun, right? You see that? So Mars is powering. And what's interesting is that we're dealing with Pisces here. We're dealing with Pisces. And this is one of the things that I've talked about with Pisces and water. Like Pisces has the potential of being like really massive, right? Because there's, first of all, it's dual and it's got such a wide breadth that's associated with it, but it's also dealing with this primal force of water. It's oceanic, it's titanic. And he's got Jupiter in Capricorn here at 11 degrees and sextiling into the sun and Mars, which is making it bigger, right? It's expanding. So if you're looking at like the sun-Mars kind of metaphor, that's like an engine. So, and Mars is like the chariot, right? Driving the sun, it's like Phaeton. And you have Jupiter here, the sextile, bringing expansion and air into that engine. Wow. That's like kind of a wow moment. You know, you can just see that. You just makes it bigger. And apparently he's a workout freak. So we have Saturn, which is also in Pisces, out in front of Mars. That's your training. We talked a little bit about that with Simone Biles with her Saturn. This is his training, right? His training, Pisces, dedicated. He's got this, looks like he's got a trine to Pluto there too. Look at that. Saturn-Pluto trine. So he's going to be intense and dedicated. Very interesting. The other thing that I thought was interesting about his chart is Mercury. So he has Mercury in Aquarius. And number one, it's an air sign, obviously, right? So Mercury is also connected to movement. And he's got a trine with the moon in Gemini. And we know that Gemini is the sign of the messenger and movement, Mercury, Quicksilver. So he's got some really interesting astrological things going on. Mercury moon trine, dealing with air, the moon. Well, I don't know if it's the highest planet in this chart because this is just something I came up with. And then you've got this moon trine to Chiron, to the true node. And again, that's a kind of an electric moon. It's a very interesting chart. Now, relationships might be tricky for him. He's got a Venus square to Neptune. And the other thing too, you get at the sun, like Mars-Pluto squares, they're fucking intense. They're intense. Mars-Pluto squares are intense. Sun-Pluto squares are intense. Like he's driven. This guy is fucking driven. When you get into those Mars-Pluto squares, it's like just, you know, win or die, win or go home. This is an interesting chart. And I could see why he is a champion. And I could see why he is good at what he does. It all starts with that Sun-Mars conjunction, super tight conjunction, sextile to Jupiter, brings in that expansion, right? Some air through Jupiter, Capricorn, there's goal setting. He's got that Saturnian discipline. This is interesting stuff. Really, really interesting stuff. Now, I wanted to find out like why he was so successful theoretically on that night in Japan. So I did another chart and I'm pretty sure I got the right time. Let's do, let's see. Let's do this one. We'll do this one. Because we know the time, I'm pretty sure that this was the time that he actually, it was pretty late at night actually. I was surprised. I think he won that race at about 10:30 at night, which is really strange. That's the time. It was, well, 11:20, weird. I mean, that's the time that's listed with the event. It's very strange. Anyway, maybe they did because of TV. Maybe that's why they did it. They wanted to do it live and they had to run it at this time. But one of the things that, first of all, he was, it's not quite a lunar return, but the moon was in Gemini. And his moon is in Gemini, and it was conjunct the true node in Gemini. Again, we're talking Mercury, we're talking the messenger of the gods, Quicksilver energy. And the other thing that I thought was interesting was some of these oppositions that were going on. So the Sun and Mercury were in Leo, and having a direct opposition with his own Mercury in Aquarius. And I'm like looking at it, well, is that something that's energetic? Like could this on an astrological level, right, with that Sun Mercury conjunction opposing his own Mercury, like fire up his Mercury? Could this be like an energetic transference? Because he ran the greatest race of his career, one of the greatest races ever. So we're looking for clues here. Like, what were the things that astrologically were on time for him? I think it's this opposition. I think you're dealing with the Sun, the power of the Sun, Mercury, again, movement, Hermes, and then this opposition, this like energetic blast to his own Mercury. And we have Saturn here too as well, which is, quite possibly the kind of the culmination of his racing, right? Everything he's kind of worked for with this kind of mercurial effort. It'll be interesting to see if he continues racing. He may not. When Saturn conjunctions Mercury, moves forward, he might say, okay, I'm done. Well, what do you do after that? You've just smashed the world record in the Olympics. What's next? Does he hang up his spikes after this, or does he continue to try to dominate? It's going to be interesting because he does have that Pluto square in his chart to Mars Sun. The other thing is that Mars was in opposition with his own Mars and Sun. So we have these oppositional energies that are taking place during that time. And maybe he was, experiencing them as energy that he could not consciously, but somehow through these transits, right, pull them and channel them into his personal planets. It's an interesting way to look at oppositions. And in a lot of ways, it's a different way to look at an opposition, because we tend to think of oppositions as like oppositional energy, things to overcome, influences that are being exerted from us, generally externally. We have to figure out how to work with them. Here, we could make a case that they were energies that could be tapped into and channeled for a peak experience, an absolute peak experience. Anyway, I love this stuff. I love it when people just do incredibly well, and they exceed beyond their wildest expectations, and usually as a result of hard work and diligence and effort and some natural ability. So congratulations, Carson Warholm, and congratulations to Rai Benjamin as well. He ran a great race. He ran the second fastest race in history in that event, and he lost. And he did it with, I think, real grace and aplomb. But that's the guy who probably won't hang up his spikes. He's going to want to win the big one at some point. Okay. All right, I'm out of here. Thanks for being here. What do we got? Got 190 people watching. Okay. All right. Do opposite axis dumbbells bring strength? Hey, Sandra. I actually thought it's an interesting comment. I actually thought of squares as being like dumbbells. I actually use that analogy when I teach. Like, when you have a dumbbell and you hang it out there like this, right? Like that. It's a square. It's a 90-degree angle. So that'll bring you strength. My niece's husband holds the Bosnian mile and 2 mile county record. That's pretty cool. He did have. I thought Rai Benjamin was awesome after that race. Give it up to those guys. Okay. Thanks for being here. See you tomorrow over in 15 minutes. You're the best. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. Thank you, Chatlandia. Thank you, everybody who supports this channel, both psychically, emotionally, and I know we've got some subscribers here as well who do support the show. Thank you for that. And I promise tomorrow's the day. I have to sign my contract with the hotel. Once I sign that contract, everything goes up on the site. You want to come to the event in October, I'll have all the information. I promise you, my word, starting tomorrow. Okay? All right. Have a great week. Take care. Bye.